My name is Alyssa Parker, and for a long time, I believed I had married into a family that cared about me. When my mother-in-law, Margaret, asked for my kidney as her birthday wish, I didn't even question it. I loved my husband, Evan, and I wanted to help the woman he loved so much. It felt like the right, selfless thing to do. I told myself that families made sacrifices for one another, and maybe this was my turn. I didn't know that this one decision would break every illusion I had about the people I trusted. After agreeing to the donation, things changed in small ways that I ignored at first. Evan acted like the surgery was a done deal, and Margaret behaved as if she already owned a part of me. She became more controlling, more confident, almost smug. I kept trying to stay positive, telling myself it was just stress from her health condition. But when I went in for the pre-surgery tests, the truth started slipping through the cracks. The doctor explained that while she did qualify for a transplant, her condition wasn't urgent. The way Evan and Margaret talked about it made it sound like she was dying, but the doctor's tone was calm, even casual. Something felt wrong, but I didn't know what to do with that feeling. Then one evening, I heard something that changed everything. Margaret was talking to Evan, her voice low but sharp. She said that after I donated, I'd always belong to the family, and that I'd think twice before ever leaving him. Evan didn't correct her. He didn't defend me. He simply agreed. It hurt in a way I never expected. I had offered my kidney out of kindness, but they saw it as a way to bind me, to trap me, to make sure I never walked away from their control. The night before the surgery, I overheard Evan again, this time laughing with a friend over the phone. He said that after the donation, I'd never dare divorce him or question his mother again. He said it like it was a strategy, like he was proud of it. That was the moment the fear left me and anger took its place. I realized I wasn't being valued. I was being used. The next morning, without telling them, I met with the transplant coordinator and withdrew my consent. I didn't make a scene. I didn't argue. I simply chose myself for the first time in a long time. But I still went to the hospital to see how they would react. And the moment the doctor announced I wasn't going through with it, their real faces appeared. Margaret exploded with anger, and Evan grabbed my arm like I had betrayed him. They didn't ask why. They didn't care how I felt. They only cared that their plan fell apart. Standing there, watching them unravel, I understood that this wasn't a family I needed to stay tied to. I walked away quietly, firmly, without looking back. Months later, I'm healthier, calmer, and stronger. I didn't lose anything that day. I only gained clarity about who I am and what I deserve. In the first year of our marriage, things between Evan and me felt normal. We were settling into our routines, learning each other's habits, and trying to build a life together. But slowly, something in him began to shift. It wasn't dramatic at first, just small changes that were easy to brush off. He started spending more time at his mother's house, coming home late, and when I asked if everything was okay, he always said he was just helping her with small things. I believed him, because I wanted to. I didn't want to assume the worst about my own husband. But as the months passed, his behavior became harder to ignore. He grew distant and distracted when we were together. He stopped asking about my day or paying attention when I talked. I would be speaking, and he'd be scrolling through something or staring off like he had somewhere else he'd rather be. When I pointed it out gently, he'd snap back with irritation, saying I was being needy or dramatic. It was a strange shift from the man who used to hold my hand just to feel close. The biggest change, though, showed up whenever his mother was involved. Margaret had always been opinionated, but after our wedding, she became openly dismissive toward me. She criticized my cooking, my job, my clothes, small jabs disguised as motherly advice. At first, I tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe she needed time to adjust to having another woman in her son's life. But soon, her comments got sharper. If I spoke about something important to me, she'd roll her eyes. If I shared an idea, she'd correct me like I was a child. And every single time, Evan took her side. Whenever I tried to talk to him privately about her behavior, he would shut me down almost instantly. He'd tell me she didn't mean it that way, or that I was being too sensitive. He'd insist that she had been through a lot, and that I should try harder to understand her. I did try. I tried to be patient, to be kind, to make her feel included. But no matter what I did, Margaret acted like I didn't belong, and Evan defended her like she could do no wrong. The tension slowly built between us. I felt like there was no safe place to express myself. I couldn't talk to my husband without being dismissed, and I couldn't talk to Margaret without being insulted. I started keeping my thoughts to myself, walking on eggshells to avoid arguments. I told myself marriages had rough patches, and maybe this was ours. I tried to stay hopeful, believing that things would get better if I stayed calm and patient. I didn't realize then that this shift in attitude, this growing coldness, was not a temporary phase. It was the beginning of a pattern. It was the first sign that Evan no longer saw me as his equal partner. He saw me as someone who should fit into his family's expectations, even if it hurt me. And I had no idea how far that mindset would go, or how deeply it would affect my life in the months to come. The night everything shifted happened during what was supposed to be a simple family dinner at Margaret's house. I had gone in with low expectations, hoping at least for a peaceful meal. Margaret greeted us with the same stiff smile she always used with me, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Evan acted normal, completely unaware of the tension I felt just being in the same room with her. We sat down at the table, and for a few minutes things were quiet. I remember thinking maybe, for once, the evening would pass without some hidden insult or criticism. But halfway through the meal, Margaret put her fork down with a dramatic sigh, loud enough to pull everyone's attention to her. She pressed a hand to her chest, as if she were delivering terrible news. She said she had been to the doctor and had received life-changing results. Her voice trembled just enough to sound believable. Then, without giving details or easing into the conversation, she announced she was going into kidney failure. I froze, unsure whether to offer sympathy or ask questions, but she didn't give me the chance. Margaret turned her head slowly and locked her eyes on mine. There was no sadness in her expression, only expectation. She leaned forward slightly and said, in a tone that felt like both accusation and command, "You owe this family a kidney." The words hit me like a slap. I tried to process what she was suggesting, but before I could react, Evan spoke. He didn't ask his mother for more information. He didn't look at me to see if I was scared or overwhelmed. He simply placed his hand on mine and said, "Babe, it's the right thing to do." He sounded calm, almost gentle, as if this was a normal request. As if giving up a part of my body was as simple as bringing dessert to a family gathering. I stared at him, shocked that he wasn't even trying to protect me or guide me through such a huge decision. I asked Margaret if there were other options, if she had talked to her doctor about the waiting list or other potential donors in the family. She immediately brushed off my questions and acted offended that I even asked. She said things like, "You're young and healthy, and it's your responsibility now that you're part of this family." Every word felt like pressure, like she was trying to box me into a corner where the only acceptable answer was yes. Evan didn't help. He squeezed my hand again and told me not to overthink it. He said his mom needed me, and that stepping up was the least I could do after everything she had done for us. I couldn't think of a single thing she had ever done for me, yet he said it as if I owed her a debt I had never agreed to. I looked at both of them and realized I had no support in that room. They weren't asking, they were expecting. I felt cornered, overwhelmed, and guilty for even hesitating. I didn't want to cause a scene or start a fight, so I said I would think about it. But Margaret didn't accept that. She insisted thinking wasn't necessary and said the doctor needed an answer soon. Evan nodded along like they had already decided for me. In that moment, I felt something inside me break a little. It was the first time I truly saw how easily they could push me aside when it suited them. By the end of the night, I found myself agreeing to something I wasn't ready for. Not because I wanted to, but because the pressure from both of them made it feel like I had no other choice. I left the dinner feeling drained, confused, and strangely ashamed, even though I knew I shouldn't have been. What I didn't realize then was that this moment wasn't the real betrayal. It was just the beginning of one. I went into the pre-surgery tests with a knot in my stomach, trying to convince myself I was doing the right thing. Even though the whole situation felt rushed, I kept reminding myself that if Margaret truly needed help, I shouldn't let fear get in the way. Evan didn't come with me to the appointments. He said he was busy and that I could handle the small stuff. That alone bothered me, but I pushed it aside and focused on what needed to be done. The hospital staff were kind and professional. They ran blood tests, scans, and asked me a long list of questions about my health. I expected the process to be stressful, but what I didn't expect was the conversation that happened at the very end. The transplant specialist, Dr. Simons, asked if he could speak to me privately. His tone wasn't urgent, just careful, the way someone talks when they know their words might cause confusion. He sat down across from me and said he wanted me to understand Margaret's medical situation clearly. He explained that yes, Margaret qualified for a kidney transplant, but her current condition wasn't severe. She wasn't in immediate danger, and she wasn't even close to the top of the priority list. According to her tests, she could continue with her current treatment plan for a long time before a transplant became necessary. I felt my whole body tense. That wasn't what I had been told at all. I asked him what he meant by not severe, and he explained it gently. She wasn't in kidney failure. She wasn't on the verge of collapse. She wasn't facing an emergency. She simply wasn't functioning at full capacity, but many patients lived stable, manageable lives like hers for years without a transplant. He looked confused when I told him my mother-in-law had said she was in urgent danger and needed my kidney right away. He hesitated and then said something that sent a chill through me. He told me he'd seen families misrepresent the urgency of a situation before, especially when a potential living donor seemed hesitant or unaware of the true facts. He said he wanted me to make a decision based on accurate information, not pressure or fear. His words made my heart sink. It meant someone, either Margaret or Evan or both, had exaggerated or twisted the truth to push me into agreeing. I sat there quietly, letting the information settle in. It felt like a weight had dropped on my chest. All the pressure Margaret had put on me, all the guilt Evan had piled on, all the rushed conversations, it suddenly made sense. They wanted me to believe she was dying so I wouldn't question anything. I felt embarrassed for not seeing it sooner, but mostly I felt hurt. I hadn't expected total honesty from Margaret, but I had expected it from my husband. As I left the hospital, I kept replaying the doctor's words. Nothing about Margaret's condition matched the urgency she had created at that dinner table. She wasn't fighting for her life. She was exaggerating her situation to get something from me. And Evan had played along with it, never once stopping to tell me the truth. The drive home felt long and heavy. I held the steering wheel tightly, thinking about how quickly they had pushed me towards surgery. It wasn't about saving her life. It had never been about health. It was about control, guilt, and using my kindness against me. That day, the reality hit me hard. I wasn't just dealing with a difficult mother-in-law. I was dealing with people who were willing to twist the truth to get what they wanted. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of what they were capable of. A few days after the appointment with Dr. Simons, I was still struggling to understand why Margaret and Evan had pushed me so hard. I hadn't told them what the doctor said, because I wanted time to think. I wanted to see how they would behave when they didn't know I had the truth. That silence gave me clarity I didn't expect. One evening, when Evan thought I was out running errands, I came home early. The house was quiet, except for voices coming from the dining room. I recognized them instantly, Evan and Margaret. I moved closer, not to eavesdrop on purpose, but because something in their tone sounded serious. As I reached the hallway, their words became clear enough to hear, and what I heard made me freeze. Margaret said in a calm but sharp voice, "Once she donates, she'll be tied to us forever. No woman walks away after giving up a kidney. She'll never dare divorce you." She said it like she was discussing a plan, not a life-changing surgery. There was no fear for her health, no gratitude, no sense of danger, just calculation. Before I could even process that, Evan responded in a way that broke me more than her words. He didn't correct her. He didn't sound uncomfortable. He simply said, "Yeah, once she does this, she won't go anywhere. It'll keep her grounded." He even laughed a little, like the whole thing amused him. To them, this wasn't about saving a life. It wasn't even about needing me. It was about controlling me. I stepped back, my heart pounding so hard I felt sick. The pieces started fitting together in ways I hadn't wanted to imagine. The rush, the pressure, the guilt, they weren't signs of worry. They were tactics. Margaret might not have created the plan alone, but Evan was part of it. He wasn't watching me struggle because he was blind. He was watching because he didn't care. I thought about the early months of our relationship, when he had been so supportive and gentle. He chose restaurants I liked, listened when I talked, acted proud to be with me. It all felt meaningful at the time, but suddenly those memories felt like pieces of a role he had played. Looking back, he had never pushed back when his mother crossed a line. He had always expected me to be the one who adjusted, the one who stayed quiet, the one who kept the peace. Standing in that hallway, listening to them talk about me like I was an object they could use, a truth settled into my mind. Evan didn't marry me because he loved me. He married me because I was useful. I was healthy, responsible, calm, and easy to manipulate. I wasn't a partner to him. I was a resource. I backed away before they could notice I was home. I walked to the bedroom quietly, trying to keep my breathing steady. My hands were shaking, but my thoughts were sharp. For the first time, I saw the marriage clearly. The tenderness, the sweet gestures, the promises. It all felt like a setup to make me trust him blindly. And once I did, he handed me over to his mother like I was part of some family plan I never agreed to. The hidden motive wasn't just shocking. It was painful in a way I didn't know how to describe. They wanted the surgery not to save Margaret, but to lock me into a life where I would always feel indebted, guilty, and obligated to them. That realization changed something inside me. It woke up a strength I didn't know I had. I wasn't ready to confront them yet, but I knew one thing for certain. They had no idea that everything was about to change. The night before the surgery was supposed to be a quiet one, a night to rest and prepare. At least, that's what Evan told me. But by then, I already knew something was deeply wrong. After hearing him and Margaret talk about using the surgery to trap me, my mind wouldn't settle. I barely spoke during dinner. Evan didn't notice. He was too focused on his phone to pay attention. Later that night, I walked down the hallway to grab some water. I wasn't trying to listen for anything, but I heard Evan's voice through the cracked door of his office. His tone was different, lighter, almost excited. I stopped when I heard him say my name, not because I wanted to spy, but because something in his voice made me uneasy. He was talking to one of his friends, someone he trusted enough to speak freely with. Evan laughed softly and said, "After tomorrow, she'll never leave me. She'll be tied to my mom for life. That's how you keep a wife loyal." He sounded proud, like he had accomplished something smart. There was no fear for me, no concern for my health, no appreciation for what I was about to do. Just ownership. Control. Confidence that he had everything under his thumb. The words hit me harder than anything he'd ever said. Hearing him talk about me like I wasn't a person with feelings, like I was just a piece of property he needed to secure, broke something inside me. For a moment, I couldn't move. I stood there with my hand pressed against the wall, feeling my world tilt. I had tried so hard to be understanding, loyal, and patient. I had tried to see the good in him even when he made it hard. But this was the truth he had kept hidden. I listened as he continued bragging, telling his friend that once the surgery was done, I would never question him again. He said I would feel guilty forever, and that guilt would keep me compliant. The way he said it made it clear he had never seen me as an equal. He didn't love me the way I loved him. He didn't respect me. To him, I was useful. I was someone he could rely on to sacrifice, to bend, to stay quiet. I walked back to the bedroom slowly, trying not to break down. My hands were trembling, and my chest felt tight. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor, letting the truth settle in. I realized I had been holding on to hope that there was still a misunderstanding, that maybe he had been pressured by his mother, or maybe he didn't know how much this was hurting me. But after hearing him speak so casually, so proudly, all of that hope faded. In that moment, I knew the marriage I thought I had didn't exist. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who had planned to use my kindness to trap me in a life I never agreed to. I wasn't a partner to him. I was a resource, a tool, something convenient. But even though I felt crushed, something else grew quietly inside me. Strength. Clarity. A decision I never expected to make. I wasn't going to let them take something from me that I couldn't get back. I wasn't going to let them chain me to a life built on manipulation. And I wasn't going to walk into that surgery room tomorrow like a woman who didn't know the truth. They thought they had me under control. They thought I would never fight back. But the breaking point had finally come, and it didn't break me the way they hoped. It opened my eyes. The morning after hearing Evan brag to his friend, I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief wash through me again and again. But underneath all of those emotions, there was something steadier, a decision forming. I knew I couldn't go through with the surgery. Not for people who saw me as a tool. Not for a marriage built on manipulation. I needed to take back control of my own life. And the first step was stopping something they thought they already owned. I didn't tell Evan where I was going when I left the house early. He barely noticed. He was too busy getting things ready for his mother, acting as if the day was some big family celebration rather than a serious medical event. I drove straight to the hospital, walked into the transplant office, and asked to speak with the coordinator privately. When I sat down across from her, my voice felt stronger than I expected. I told her I was revoking my consent for the donation. She didn't pressure me or try to talk me out of it. She simply nodded and said it was my right. Then she asked quietly if I felt safe. I hesitated, then told her everything. how the diagnosis was exaggerated, how the pressure had been nonstop, how I found out the real motive behind their rush. She listened carefully, made notes, and assured me that my decision was valid, final, and protected. She said the hospital would handle the cancellation, and I wasn't required to inform the family myself. Walking out of her office, I felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't joy or relief yet, just a steady quietness. I realized I wasn't scared anymore. The truth had already broken me open. Now I was just choosing myself. But I didn't confront Evan or Margaret that day. I didn't walk in yelling or crying. I wanted to see their real reaction when they found out they couldn't control me. I wanted to know what they looked like when their plan fell apart. On the morning of the surgery, I acted as if everything was normal. I woke up early, showered, and got dressed. Evan was unusually cheerful, almost excited. He kept telling me how proud he was of me, like he was praising a child for doing what she was told. Margaret sent a message saying she would meet us at the hospital and that she hoped I had mentally prepared to be useful. I ignored it. At the hospital, I stayed quiet and calm. Evan kept checking the time, acting impatient. Margaret arrived in a bright outfit, looking more energized than someone supposedly on the brink of kidney failure. She didn't even ask how I was feeling. She only asked the nurse when things would start. I watched them both with a strange clarity, seeing every smug expression, every careless word, every sign that they believed the day belonged to them. Then the doctor walked in. He didn't look confused or stressed, just firm and professional. He told the three of us that the surgery could not proceed because I had withdrawn consent. The moment he said it, everything changed. Evan's face dropped instantly, twisting into something dark. Margaret looked like someone had ripped the floor out from under her. The shock was immediate, raw, and exactly what I expected. I just sat there, calm and quiet, watching their reaction unfold. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel fear. I only felt the truth settling into place. They thought they could manipulate me into giving up a part of my body for their control. But I wasn't theirs to control, and this was the moment they finally realized it. Alyssa stood there calmly as the doctor delivered the news, but the reaction that followed was louder than anything she had imagined. Margaret exploded the moment she heard the surgery was canceled. She shouted in the middle of the hallway, calling Alyssa selfish and dramatic. She even yelled that Alyssa had ruined her birthday, as if the whole situation had been planned just to celebrate her. People stared, nurses stepped back, and the scene turned into a full public show of anger. Evan didn't try to calm his mother. Instead, he turned to Alyssa with cold eyes and grabbed her arm tightly. He lowered his voice, but the words were sharper than a scream. He told her she had embarrassed them, that she had made them look like idiots in front of everyone. There was no concern for her safety, no worry about her feelings, only anger about how things appeared. In that moment, everything became clear. Alyssa finally saw the truth without any confusion or doubt. These were not people who cared about her. They were not a family who loved her. They only cared about control, image, and getting what they wanted from her. Standing there, watching them rage over a kidney they didn't urgently need, she realized she meant nothing to them beyond usefulness. And that clarity, painful as it was, gave her the strength she would need for what came next. Alyssa didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. Instead, she quietly took out her phone and pressed play. The hallway filled with the exact words Evan and Margaret thought she would never repeat. First came Margaret bragging about keeping Alyssa tied to the family. Then Evan's voice followed, proudly saying that once the surgery was done, Alyssa would never be able to leave him. The medical staff fell silent. Nurses stopped walking. Even the doctor's face changed from concern to disbelief. Everything was out in the open now. Every lie, every manipulation, every selfish intention. Margaret tried to shout over the recording, claiming it was taken out of context, but no one believed her. The doctor firmly stated that coercing someone into a donation was a serious violation, and he warned Margaret that the hospital would be filing a report. He also said her condition had been exaggerated, which could lead to legal consequences. Evan finally understood the situation was slipping out of his hands. His proud plan, the one he had bragged about, was now the very thing exposing him. He reached for Alyssa, trying to explain, but she stepped back. She didn't need to argue. His own words had already spoken for her. Later that day, she went home, packed her belongings, and walked out. No dramatic goodbye, no tears left to shed. She filed for divorce immediately, making sure they had no chance to corner her emotionally again. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. Months after everything, Alyssa sat quietly in her new apartment, thinking about how close she had come to giving up a part of herself for people who didn't deserve it. The thought of almost losing her kidney to satisfy their greed still made her shiver. She realized how easily she could have been trapped, controlled, and used, and how lucky she was to have stopped it in time. That moment of clarity gave her a deep sense of relief, but also a quiet anger at how blind she had been. She started rebuilding her life slowly, piece by piece. She reconnected with her own family, people who truly cared about her well-being. Their support reminded her that love isn't about control, guilt, or manipulation. She focused on her own health, her own career, and her own happiness. For the first time in years, she made decisions for herself, without worrying about pleasing anyone else or being trapped in someone else's plan. Margaret, of course, faced consequences. The hospital launched a review of her case, questioning her exaggerated medical claims and coercive behavior. The thought of her mother-in-law finally being held accountable gave Alyssa a quiet satisfaction. Evan tried reaching out multiple times, calling and sending messages, but Alyssa didn't respond. She realized she didn't owe him any explanations. He had made his choices, and now she was free to make hers. Alyssa also reflected on the kind of strength she had discovered in herself. She didn't need revenge in a dramatic or public way. Her revenge had been simple but powerful. She chose herself. She refused to be used, she refused to be silenced, and she refused to be manipulated. By stepping away and protecting her own life, she had regained something far more valuable than anyone could have taken from her: her self-respect, her health, and her freedom. Her life now moved forward in ways she hadn't imagined before. She took up new hobbies, spent more time with people who genuinely cared, and allowed herself to dream again. No longer overshadowed by fear or guilt, she started to feel a lightness she hadn't known in years. The lessons she had learned from the betrayal were painful, but they made her stronger, wiser, and more aware of who she could trust. Alyssa knew she had survived a storm that could have destroyed her, and she had emerged whole. She didn't need approval, praise, or validation from those who had tried to control her. The most important thing was that she had chosen herself, and that choice was worth more than anything anyone could have demanded. Life felt hers again, and she was determined to never let anyone take it away.